Now, to all the Osho followers, if you come at me in the comment section with your blazing guns, I would request you to first patiently listen to the entire video and then come to a conclusion. Now, Alan Watts speaks about this Hebrew teaching which talks about the element of irreducible rascality in human beings. And it is there in every human being without exception. So even the highest masters or guru have that element of rascality in them. Nobody is an exception. It is a part of human conditioning. And you see, it is required. Some amount of rascality is required to operate in life and living. Otherwise, it is very difficult to sustain. It is very difficult to thrive. And it should not be seen as something negative, because we are never talking from that viewpoint in our discussion. So someone asked me about Osho, and what I think is that Osho was a grade A rascal, a complete rascal. But the difference is that he always knew that he was a rascal. And the problem with us is that we can't see our own element of rascality. We all are the same. He accepted his hypocrisy. We do not accept ours. And that sort of creates a dissonance within us, which causes anxiety. So accepting one's own flaws and imperfections, everything is by design. The nature is designed to be flawed. It is a part of the Creator's perfect plan. But the problem with us is that we are always in this incessant thinking mode, always chasing that movement, that one method to become better, that one technique that could give us the ultimate liberation. So, listening to Osho during the early stages of my spiritual seeker opened the door for something wonderful, for something to explore and investigate. Because I was operating from my default conditioning and always chasing right and wrong. So Osho opened this idea, his words, his books opened this idea to explore the very idea of right and wrong. Now, most people, unfortunately, have been introduced to Osho through the documentary World Wide West, I don't know, something like that. I believe it is on that platform, Netflix. Now, these documentaries are made from a particular perception, where a person is painted in a particular light so that it is appealing to the audiences. And Osho was similarly portrayed. See, it is a sport for us to first fancy people, then put them on a pedestal, and then push them from that pedestal. So this has happened to virtually all gurus, all teachers that have existed. Not only just gurus, we do that to ordinary people as well. Someone you fancy, you create an image of that person. You put them on a pedestal immediately. And when that person's actions do not align with your thinking, you very conveniently push them from the pedestal and give them labels and names and so on. Now, That said, I was introduced to Osho in a very different manner. First, I read his books, then I listened to a couple of his videos, and which opened my mind to a different possibilities. And by reading his book, I could recognize that this guy is a complete rascal. But he knew that he was a rascal. And I cannot deny his intellect or the powerful insights he gave in those books. But if you are introduced to Osho through documentaries and through these videos that depict him like a cult like leader and all, he had a cult. Now, if you see him through that light, then you miss out on something. Now, I never followed his meditation practices. I don't like those red orangish color robes. I would probably never go to his ashram because I don't know who is running those ashrams and what exactly are they teaching right now. For me, his words, his books were enough to open my mind, to at least start the seeking. But when I had to go deep, then I had to read Jiddu Krishnamurti. Because Jiddu Krishnamurti blocked a lot of nonsense. Whereas Osho spoke about a lot of nonsense. But you see, the company he was in, sometimes that nonsense had to be spoken. So Osho, for me, is not a person. Osho is consciousness. Just like Krishna for me is consciousness. Was Krishna a good man? No, not at all. Read Mahabharata and you'll know what Krishna was. But Krishna represents the totality of consciousness for me, which includes everything, good, bad, ugly. All sides are accepted in that. So even in Osho, there was good, bad, and ugly. Krishna broke practically every rule in the rule book, where he was leading one side of the, between the two groups, he was leading one of the groups into a war. But that was the nature of circumstances. That is what had to be done. And he had tried his level best to avert the war. But he knew he could. And the most important thing is that he used deception to win the war. He did not play fair. So everything is included in that consciousness. If you see a person, then your perception will always be limited. But if you see from the totality of consciousness, then it is completely a different picture of a person. So while I think that Osho was a rascal, I cannot deny the fact that the seeds of spiritual seeking for me were laid through his words, through his books. And I believe for many people it is the same. And virtually all masters are saying the same thing. There is no contradiction. The contradiction seems at the level of the mind, where different mind interpret different teachings in a different way. But for me, it was absolutely clear that what Osho or Jiddu Krishnamurti or Ramesh Balsekar was saying it was not too different. Yes, their methods were different, their approaches were different. But eventually they were all saying the same thing. So yes, we all have that element of irreducible rascality within us. which does not go because it is a part of human conditioning. So all that you can do is accept what it is, rather than trying to fight your conditioning and trying to forcefully change yourself, because the change will not be lasting. So that is my view on Osho.